For that. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 2nd. Oh, good evening. Mine's not. Oh, here we go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Auburn School Committee. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start with introductions down here to my right, please.
Yep, Dan Poisson, Ward 5.
Clarissa Perez Armendariz, Ward 1.
Pam Hart, Ward 2.
Karen Matthew, Ward 3.
Connie Brown, Superintendent.
Pat Gaudier, at large.
Pam Albert, at large.
Jason LeBeck, Mayor.
Abigail Fauché, Student Representative.
Mark Conrad, Business Manager.
Sue Doris, Assistant Superintendent.
All right, and we have one of our student reps. Gabriel has an excused absence for this evening. And then Mr. Belknap has an excused tardy this evening. He is handing out basketball awards at Auburn Middle School and will be over as soon as he is done. He'll fly down the hill as soon as he is done. So with that, let's begin with an approval of the consent agenda for this evening, which includes the agenda, the minutes of February 16th, 2022, as well as the certificated nomination for Christina Myers. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. I have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Pam. All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. I'm going to open it up to public participation this evening. Public participations for members of the community who would like to come and speak to the school committee. Please limit your remarks to about 3 minutes, and we are inviting people to come up to the podium right here if you'd like to address the school committee. It's the first thing on the agenda. Good evening. Can you tell us your name and your affiliation with the school department, please? So for public record, this is John.
For public record, my name is John Stark. You could call me Relentless, like I told you last time. I'm here to seek accountability. I don't care if you're going to wait another 2 weeks to drop the mask, okay? You can't point people out here for doing wrong, but yet you have no accountability. You put a no trespass on me at the school, okay? Why? For exercising my First Amendment rights and freedom to assemble. That I will take you to court for. A lot of people in this room don't know what you've done, okay? And I'm here. I'm seeking accountability. I have every peer-reviewed science, and I've sent this one right here, every article that would get the kids off these masks and tell you that they were dangerous for the kids. So today, I'm gonna show you something, okay? Y'all see this? This is a regular mask that you send our kids in. Oh, about 30 days or so ago, they came on the news and said that these don't work at all, okay? So, your normal mask is 65 to 80 micron holes, okay? Your virus is 1 micron. What have you been doing to our kids? That's like throwing a bowling ball through a manhole cover or sand through a chain link fence. You make no sense. Not only didn't you not accept my peer-reviewed science, but you had me escorted out here by the police. How many times? I'm coming for you, okay? And I'm gonna do this right. I'm asking for accountability. None of you, except Mr. Poisson, called me back on the phone. Every one of the teachers should be ashamed for what's going on and what they've done to our kids. This is all about control. This is all about politics. Isn't it amazing how Biden makes a speech last night and the mask got lifted? Oh boy, they're worried about the primaries, aren't they? Let's be real, folks. All of you, we're all adults here. You want me to be civil. Now I'm civil. But ain't none of you answering me. I didn't get an answer from any of you. I want the criminal trespass removed, or I'm gonna sue you in court for filing a false police report because I spoke to the woman and she never emailed you, called you out. I talked to 14 people today about the mask at school. The only reason they didn't come in here, is because you suppressed our voices and you turned us down and you refused to look at peer-reviewed science. I'm 61 years old. I've never had the police called on me this many times in my life. and I'm not happy about it. I want accountability. Are you or do you expect to collect any funds or any extra money during the time of COVID for keeping our masks or maybe even vaxxing them? I asked you that question directly when I first came in here on October 6th, and you said no. I bet you I can prove different. Look at the ESSER fund or the American Rescue Plan or the COVID funds. Follow the money. None of you should be getting extra money in here at all for what you've done. Do you understand? I will be at the city council seeking answers. The next thing I'm going to present you with, one of the best peer-reviewed science articles I found. Fact. Masks are dangerous for kids. They always have been. They always will be. This is yours to read, and you can hear me on the microphone today. I didn't stand up, and I'm a lot more civil now, but I'm still a lot more upset for what you've done to our kids. Every one of you look around in this room and look at me directly in the eye. Every one of you should be ashamed for what you've done. You didn't look at science. You didn't do anything. You went on a political view, and you went on your own way. You suppressed the parents' voices, and you turned them out of this room, and that's the reason they all didn't come in. Because they all told me they wanted to come in. One was afraid that the FBI was going to come to his house because we've been labeled as domestic terrorists. How do you like that? So with that being said, I'm going to drop two things on you. They cannot either isolate or they cannot purify COVID. That means that it was man-made. You understand where I'm coming from? So with that, with people like Dr. Fauci and all these criminals that pulled this on us, I'm also going to drop federal charges on each one of your surety bonds. And when this finally comes to wash, whether it takes the primaries or not, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to put the charges. I want resignations, I want accountability, and I'm going to put the charges against your surety bonds. So I make sure the criminal charges, when they do arrive, that they're against you folks. I'm out of here. I've had enough. I want accountability. Everybody in this town deserves it for what you've done, especially what you've done to me. You called the cops on me 9 times for standing up for the kids. I'm the only one with any nads to stand up for these kids because you all ran them out of here because of your political preference. You have a nice day. The next time I see you all, we'll probably be in court because I got my foot on the accelerator and I ain't letting up this time. I told you I was relentless. I wasn't kidding, was I? Y'all have a nice day.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Told you I
Stark.
could keep it a little more civil.
Thank you,
I'll see
Mr.
in
Stark.
court.
Thank you. Anyone else here would like to speak to the public, to school committee this evening? And if you could please use the podium, it's set up right there for you.
By the way, these are federal charges. I suggest you take a look at them.
Thank
I
you.
suggest you take a look at this because I've sent you plenty.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
you have a
Stark.
nice day, you understand?
Yep,
I'm
thank-
coming for you for what you did to me.
Thank you, Mr. Stark.
Get the mask off our kids.
Thank you.
Shame on all of you. Hope you get shamed when you walk
Mr.
into the
Stark,
store.
thank you.
I'm leaving.
Thank
Chill
you.
out. Every time we see you in the store, we'll shame you. Shame on you. Shame on all of you.
Hello, sir. How can we help you this evening? Can you tell us your...
Galano. I live in Auburn.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Galano. How can we help you?
Well, I got a few issues. A month ago, the superintendent said she was going to check on past drivers and that she would report back to the committee, to this meeting, as to what she found the results as why bus drivers were leaving. 2 weeks ago, I didn't hear anything from the superintendent as far as the results were. I don't know if we're going to hear any results tonight as to what the outcome was as to why drivers were leaving. I would like answers to that. So will I be getting that tonight? Can I get an answer to that?
I don't believe it's on Dr. Brown's superintendent's report. I believe those are HR issues, and I'm not sure what can be shared publicly.
I'm sure you can share general information in terms of how many people left for this reason or that reason. I'm sure you can do that. Positive. And if you're not going to give me that, then I'll just FOIA request it,
Okay.
because I can do that. 2 weeks ago, you talked about training drivers, which is great. I'm going to suggest that when you have an applicant, that in that agreement, he agrees to stay, or she, for 1 year. If not, they will reimburse you. I'm going to throw out $1,000. In other words, say, it costs $1,000 to train you. We're not going to charge you, but if you leave before a year, we're going to collect that $1,000. My experience has been people get trained. A month down the road, they go across the river, pick up a $1,500 bonus, and they're gone. And you're the one that trained them. So I strongly recommend that you sign an agreement with them and say, we'll train you, we're not going to charge you this money, but if you leave before a year, then you owe us money. That takes away the incentive to go across the river and get the bonus. The other thing I heard 2 weeks ago was this program for bus routes. I've been involved with it twice in different districts. It's been a few years, so I'm not sure if it's changed, but when I was involved with it, it was not user-friendly. It was really difficult to install it and to make it work. One district eliminated it. They just said it was just too bad. The other one had to hire somebody to actually implement it and monitor it and do it, which was even more money. So I would recommend that you call districts that do have it, and maybe call districts that don't have it and find out why, and get the pros and cons before you spend any money.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mr. Galano.
All right? That's
Yes.
all I have tonight.
I don't know. All right, thank you. Anyone else like to come speak to the school committee this evening? Hi, welcome.
My name is Audrey Murphy. I have emailed all of you on the school committee. I did not hear back from any one of you except for one person, Ms. Hart, who just said thank you for contacting me, never addressed my issues, and I believe you all are elected officials.
What is your name again?
My name is Audrey Murphy,
Audrey Murphy?
and I did email all of you, and I did not hear back from any of you, and I was very disappointed in that. I'm also here to talk about the masks. As we know, I didn't know this gentleman, but he made some valid points, maybe a little abruptly, but he did make very good valid points. I have packets here, which apparently I don't know if they're going to be any good, but these are government surveys, not surveys, government studies where they have actually proven that these masks don't work. They are political. And as he pointed out, we had Mr. Biden take his mask off, and everybody can. They're coming off everywhere. They're just optics. That's all they are. Student masking has no scientifically established benefits in the real world. When an intervention real-world benefits are too small to measure, we feel that the masks should be ending their use. Indicators of student mental health is distressing and alarming. And what we've been doing to these poor children who are not going to give you COVID, it's just sad. I think it's child abuse what you're doing to these children. A global analysis of 29 studies found that depressive and anxiety symptoms doubled during the pandemic, with 25% of the youth experiencing depressive symptoms and 20% experiencing anxiety symptoms. This is from a JAMA study. This isn't some off-the-wall study that you all think that we're just doing fake news. A study of eating disorders of hospitalization found an increase of 120% increase. That's from the AMA Academy of Pediatrics. According to a national CDC surveillance data, emergency department visits for suspected suicide attempts in adolescent girls increased 51%. This is from your CDC. So these are all government agencies that are doing these studies, yet you all want to sit here and keep these masks on our poor little children. Children are resilient. They're resilient because you're forcing them to be resilient. The CDC data shows the annual pediatric mortality rate from COVID is similar to that of the flu in children. Did we ever mask children when they had the flu? Did we close down schools? Did we send them home? No. We lived life as normal, and that's not what we're doing here. Student masking is the most visible and controversial part of ongoing school committee mitigations. The most important thing to remember is that the risk of severe disease from COVID-19 for healthy children has always been low. There is no reason to keep these masks on our children. We need to take them off, and why wait 2 more weeks? What's 2 more weeks going to do? Student masking, excuse me here. when an intervention and real-life benefits, I've read that, I'm sorry, but I did print outs, I don't know if they're interesting to you, because apparently he did send you printouts, that surgical mask, cloth mask, you know cloth masks don't work. You even go in the hospital now, and you have to put on these paper masks, which are surgical masks, which are used for splashing. They're not going to keep that little minuscule Omicron variant out of your face. It's all a joke. All of you wearing masks tonight, it's a joke. Because these cloth masks don't work. You can't wear a cloth mask going into a hospital now because they don't work. You can put your little paper mask over it. But we need to get these masks off the children. We need to get them off today. What you're doing to these children is terrible. And I just wish you would see that. Stop making it a political issue. And if the teachers don't want to be around the children, then they need to find another profession. Teachers used to be for the children, but now they're all for their political party. They can go off on vacations and not wear masks, but when they're in the classroom, they're going to scream and yell, "Oh my God, I'm going to die!" Find another job. Get the masks off our children.
All right, thank you very much. All right, anyone else like to come speak to the school committee this evening? Hi.
My name's Kelsey Nelson. I have 3 kids at Sherwood Heights. I have nothing planned to say, but I'm here about the mask. I just wish you guys would really think about it and try to go optional for parents and kids. Everybody else in Maine is starting to do it. I have a list of all the schools that are going mask optional, and I just wish you guys would really think about it tonight. And maybe let's just try it. We haven't even tried, you know, and we're doing pool testing still. We still have safety. I think we could try. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Kelsey. Anyone else like to come speak to the school committee this evening?
I'm just here. I don't have a lot to say. I'm just here. I'm Jeff Robitaille. I'm here just to support the same issue here. I believe this is damaging to our kids. I really do. I don't believe it. I believe it's not healthy. It's also psychologically damaging over a long period of time. It's been almost 2 years here, guys. I think it's time to let it go. And I just wanted to show that some support. That's all.
Thank you very much
for your time.
coming. Absolutely. Anyone else like to speak to the school committee this evening? All right, seeing no one. See anyone getting up? All right, seeing no one, I'm going to close public participation. Thank you for those of you who joined us this evening. All right, moving on, presentation on the 2022-2023 Auburn School Department Operating Budget Review.
Thank you very much. I have up on the screen the PowerPoint presentation, and we will use that in part. I guess it's on the screen on that side of the chambers. So to get started, just as an FYI, it seems like this is the point of the budget when we kick it off, but actually budgets never stop. And you may recall back in November, we talked about what the budget was going to look like. We talked about the steps. We talked about the calendar. We've met with the city council. That was in December to give them a preview of what that budget may look like and some of the fixed costs that we are anticipating. So now we kick the process off in earnest, and you, for the next 4 March Wednesdays, will have a chance to hear each of the department presentations, the school presentations, and get a sense of where all those pieces fit together. So let's get going. My goals include a transparent, goal-focused, inclusive, and clearly communicated process. I was talking with a good friend from the Sun Journal and said, my task is to make sure that you understand what I live every day in terms of budget. I need to make it something that you are able to understand. And so that means clearly communicated. As I did last year, I will be going to each of the schools to give a budget presentation. That starts next week. Those are voluntary presentations, and I go and give a not as detailed overview as this one, but I certainly give them the facts and sort of the nuts and bolts of this. The second thing is your budget message review. And so in your budget books, and we'll spend a minute just sort of getting the orientation for that, you have a budget message. This is modeled after what the city manager does for the city council. We started doing this last year at the behest of Mr. Carrier, who was at that time the mayor's rep to the school committee. And in my message, it goes through, and if you would indulge me for just a minute, It goes through what the budget is proposed as, and at this point, it is the superintendent's recommended budget. And then it gives you an introduction of how we got there. It includes the school board's goals. As you know, I'm a goal-driven superintendent, and I believe as the policymakers, you set the direction, and it's my job to carry that out. And so you reviewed your goals back in January at a retreat and confirmed that these are the ones that you want the school department working to. We've made some good gains this year. As you know, our literacy rates, K-8, are up 15%, and we expect those rates to continue to climb. If you go into, you will see a variety of charts. This is under Cost Center 1. It'll give you some information about preschool. And as you go through that, the book is arranged by, I call them cost centers or articles. Those are interchangeable. There are 11 of them that's set in statute. So Cost Center 1 is regular education. Those are all our classroom teachers, all of our buildings. 2 is special education. 3, and Mrs. Goddard and I were chatting about this before we got started, we don't pay tuition for our CTE students. And so therefore, we don't have that cost contained in our budget. There is, so I'm going to go back to the beginning. There's a revised budget calendar. We have consolidated some of our presentations based on some of the feedback from you, feedback from the administrators that we believe we can streamline some of our presentations and not use all 5. So as we go down through that calendar tonight, we will go through all of Article 1 and all of the schools. Next week, we will have Cost Center 2, which is special education, Article 4, which is, it's called other instruction, but it's essentially all of the athletics and co-curricular activities. Cost Center 5, which is student and staff support, that includes technology, the Office of the Superintendent of Academic Affairs. And so that'll give you a sense, I'm going to stop there, of what is coming. So that is a revised calendar. So this is the orientation as you go through your budget books. There are probably too many tabs. Mark and I have talked about trying to streamline that for next year, but since that ship had sailed for this year, we stuck with all the tabs that are in your book. But essentially, they're organized by article or cost center, and within each cost center, you'll find, for example, in Cost Center 1, if I turn to that tab, that would be East Auburn. At the beginning of each article is a list of all the personnel in that article by line by cost. That's another upgrade that we made last year at the behest of the City Council. So you can do an at-a-glance of all the people who are in that particular article. There is information regarding enrollment, revenue, and then, of course, the different cost centers. This evening, we're planning on a rather light touch on some things like revenues because we want to discuss that with you at the end of the process. Because like many things, this is like putting a puzzle together, and you can't start at the end and have it all make sense. So you want to begin and put those puzzle pieces together as we go. So we will include for you tonight the enrollment and student-teacher ratios. It's important to remember that 80% of our budget is related to personnel. Personnel includes health insurance, salaries, and all the benefits that are associated with that, workers' comp, unemployment, what I call roll-ups. You'll hear me refer to that as well. Notable initiatives and changes, and the principals will go through that with you. I already talked about the list of employees, and then also included in each of the articles is an ADS printout. An ADS is the software that we use to drive costs and list each of the articles. And so it's fairly straightforward. You'll see an account number, you'll see a cost, you'll see what we spent, you'll see what we spent last year, and then what we're proposing, and then there's a difference. Some of those differences are things like salary changes and the recognition of agreements that the board has entered into. Some of those things recognize that costs have gone up in certain areas. Electricity is up 15%. So you'll see that as you go through, and that's reflected in the ADS printout. So the budget proposed for the Auburn School Department for 22-23 is $54,441,781. And where does that go? So that is an increase of $6,502,033, and the lion's share of that is for the new Edward Little High School. This is something that the voters in Auburn approved several years ago. Last year, we started talking about principal and interest payments, and this year they both come due. There is a local-only payment that we make as a community, and then the state picks up the rest of the bond. So our debt service for the project is $6,633,944, or an increase of $4,208,002, or an eye-popping 173% increase. It's important to remember, and this was part of the discussion that we had last year, that we have to recognize all of the cost in our budget. Even if it's state-funded as well as locally funded, it's all added to the bottom line of the Auburn School Department budget. So looking at the mill rate for education, it would rise to $9.80, or an increase of 58 cents. And one of the things we try to do is estimate what that would be on a $150,000 home, and that would be $87.27 if passed as is. So we're going to get into the individual school presentations tonight because that's really the heart of what our evening discussion is. Each of the principals will come forward. I'm going to skip over the enrollment data that's in there for your consideration. So East Auburn is the first one up. So Elizabeth, come on down and talk to us about the East Auburn Community School budget.
Evening. Thank you to the school committee members for allowing me to share the 2022-23 school year budget proposal with you this evening. So this year, East Auburn currently has 164 students with 10 and a half teachers, making an average class size of about 15 students. The part-time teacher position is the AM pre-K teacher. This year, there has been a huge benefit as we include the 2 ESSER teachers because it has reduced our classroom sizes tremendously. Projections for next year are around 158 students with an average of 15 students per classroom with the 10 and a half classroom teachers, which include those 2 ESSER positions. Without the 2 ESSER teacher positions, there would be 8 and a half teachers, which would put an average class size of 19 students per classroom. That's an average. So for next year, the only planned staffing change is the retirement of the physical education teacher who East Auburn shares with Park Avenue. East Auburn will continue the implementation of My View and My Perspective literacy programs. For math, based on the results of the math curriculum committee, there is a potential for a new math curriculum or the continuation of everyday math and illustrative math for 6th grade. And East Auburn's proposed budget is coming in at a decrease over the current year's budget.
Thank you. Any questions for Elizabeth?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Oh, sorry.
Up on the screen.
You have to just keep flipping.
Going.
Yep. Yep.
It should be, if you go to Fairview. No, it should be.
Okay, sorry. I have a question. The 2 ESSER teachers that were there this year, will they continue to be there next year?
They will. It's a great question, Pam, because one of the things that we're trying to do with our operating budget is move some of the ESSER positions from ESSER into our operating budget. I think the committee has talked before about the cliff. This is something that will be facing the school department in 23-24, when those ESSER funds are gone. And so we've tried to identify, albeit slowly, those essential positions and moving them into the operating budget.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Hello.
Hi. Wow, nothing came out. Hi. I'm going to speak a little bit about Fairview School, so I appreciate the time. Currently, our enrollment is 464 students, and we have 27 classroom teachers pre-K to 6, and our class size ranges from a low of 13 to a high of 22. For FY23, with the same number of classroom teachers, 27, out of those 27, 1 is funded through ESSER. I am projecting our class our enrollment to be 472. The change is just an increase in one section of pre-K. So we're anticipating filling that. So I added those numbers in there. Our class size would range from a low of 13 to a high of 19.
And Celeste, can I ask first, where's your 13? What grade level do you?
If you go back, grade 2.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And thinking about that and staff changes, what we would need to do is monitor class sizes and make some shifts within. So I'm looking at potentially moving a position to first grade, to have 4 first grade teachers, to keep those numbers low, keeping a 4th second grade position to keep those numbers low, and likely shifting from 4 fourth grade teachers to 3 teachers to just kind of play with those numbers. So still the same number of staff, but moving within, which is something we look at every year and make adjustments accordingly. The only other staff change that I have at Fairview is that I do have one ed tech retirement this year. And then beyond that, our initiatives are the same as East Auburn. We'll continue to focus on the new literacy program, and then continue to work on math, depending on whichever program we end up using. That will continue to be a focus for us.
Okay. Any questions for Celeste? Seeing none, thanks, Ms. Bodett.
Thank you.
What is the banging, clicking noise I keep hearing? Sorry, Steph.
That's okay. I'm excited to be here again to talk about Park Avenue and where we are currently and where we're projecting forward for the 2022-23 school year. Our current enrollment at Park Avenue is 314 students, and I can add the caveat that seems to be changing pretty consistently right now with families moving in. Our ELL population has been increasing, which is good for us because our numbers were down a little bit, so we'll take that. We have 20 classes at Park Avenue right now between pre-K and 6. The average class size is 16 students. Our highest classes are at 20, and that's in kindergarten, and our lowest class size is at 11 in first grade. Yeah, it's one of those situations, I see your face, Karen, when you pray, like, please, any student coming, don't be a kindergartner. It's going to tip my numbers, but that's just the way it goes. And I have 2 fabulous kindergarten teachers that make it work and do a great job. Our projected enrollment for the 2022-23 school year is 295 students, with a decrease in our kindergarten enrollment, and we have a larger 6th grade class that will be transitioning out. The average class size with staffing and including our ESSER teacher would be at 15, and it would be at 16 without that ESSER position built in. Park Avenue, one of our celebrations is that we house the English Language Learner Program, or we say ELL, for the Auburn School Department. And we have currently 113 students identified as English language learners at Park Avenue between pre-K and 6th grade. Some of those students have transitioned out through their access testing scores, so they're more on monitor status, and the staff continue to work with them to make sure they're maintaining their progress. So we have 97 students currently receiving service through 5 ELL teachers with an average caseload of 19 students. Our staffing changes, I recently had a retirement, so I still have an open ed tech position at Park Avenue, but at the end of the school year, we will be having 2 retirements. Our PE teacher that we share with East Auburn is retiring, and I also have a retirement in my reading recovery teacher position. And our initiatives mirror those of my colleagues, that we continue to do the good work around our literacy instruction with my view and my perspectives, and looking forward to the recommendations from our math curriculum committee.
Thank you. Any questions for Steph?
I have a question. Your ELL students, it says the monitor status are the ones who have graduated the program, but it still needs some monitoring. What do you mean by current ELL caseload? And as
This-
far as,
Great question, Pam. So when we talk about caseload, we're referring to the number of students that a teacher works with in the general, our ELL students aren't in separate classes all by themselves. They're part of our regular population, but when they're having their ELG, their English language groups, so specified for their needs or their level of English language speaking, those teachers work with those specifically identified students. So that's the average caseload or average number of students that each one of those teachers is responsible for. So not only at Park Avenue, not only are they bringing them out of the classroom to give specialized instruction, but they also do a push-in model. So they go into the classroom so that as a fourth grader is sitting in class with all of their peers, all of their English-speaking peers, their teacher would, or ed tech or support staff person, would be in the room supporting that instruction and helping them access the learning that everybody else is receiving.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you, Clarissa, can you-
How has this number, the average caseload, changed over the past few years?
I would have to get that number for you, Clarissa, since I'm still new to this position here at Park Avenue, but I can get that and email it to you.
Any other questions for staff, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, as a follow-up to what Clarissa was saying, when you're gathering some statistics, can you also look at the average tenure of someone in the ELL program when they're moving on from close monitor status to regular caseload? In other words, how many years is a student in the ELL program? So, yeah.
From elementary, when they move in, a newcomer
When did they
into when
graduate
they.
out?
Okay, through
Yeah,
access.
what's the
first.
average years of graduation out of ELL?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Steph.
Thanks, Steph. One thing that I wanted to mention is that as we did last year, we are recording all of the questions, and we will put them on the website with a Q&A so that people can see what has been asked and then what the answers are to them. So if you don't hear it tonight, then that would be the first place to look for those answers the next couple of days.
Excellent, thank you.
Cheryl, Sherwood Heights.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share more information about the Sherwood Heights budget. As of October 1st, Sherwood Heights had an enrollment of 355 students. Our class sizes ranged from a low of 13 in one of our second grade classes to a high of 21 students in one of our first grade classes. We have 20 regular classroom teachers, including one ESSER teacher at sixth grade, and the average number of students per class across the school is 16. Our projected enrollment for 22-23 is 347 students. The average class size is anticipated to be 16 students, with a low of 14 students per class in third grade and a high of 20 students per class in grade 2. Overall, Sherwood Heights will need 20 classroom teachers, including that ESSER teacher, next year, which is the same as we had for 2021-22. At this time, we are not anticipating any staff changes, but we will continue our commitment to a culture of literacy, including implementing my view and my perspectives with fidelity and increasing family engagement regarding literacy. And we will also continue the implementation of illustrative mathematics in grade 6 and support any district curriculum and professional development decisions regarding mathematics for K through grade 5.
Okay. Any questions for Cheryl? Seeing none. Oh,
Sorry.
sure.
20 regular classroom teachers.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
So we're going to skip over Walton because Mr. Davis is not here tonight and go to Washburn. Andrew, Mr. Bard.
Good evening, and thank you for having us talk about our school budgets. So this current school year, my total enrollment's 241, and I house 15 classroom teachers. At this time, I do have 2 ESSER teachers that help support that. My class sizes range from 13 to 19. Looking at next year, I'm projecting an increase to 257 students, again, having 15 teachers. Looking at just shifting some positions around. First grade is my bubble class, so going from 3 kindergartens to 3 first grades is the shift that I need to do. Potential staff changes, I do have 2 retirements for 2 EdTech retirees. And along with my colleagues, we are implementing the literacy program. I did write everyday math for now, but pending the curriculum review, we would be supporting the math curriculum as well.
Hi, any questions for Mr. Bard? Seeing none, as he's turning around. So I think just a quick question before we jump into the middle school. When we talk about projected numbers for the following year, how do you, has Auburn started their kindergarten roundup, register your kindergarten kids yet?
We'd have to ask one of the elementary principals that. Sue, do you know?
We have not started. So when
No,
you think
we
about
have
what
not
your
had.
potential kindergarten enrollment, it just dawned on me, I'm sorry, like I should have asked this question before. When you think about your potential kindergarten enrollments, are you projecting those numbers based on who you have enrolled in pre-K right now? Yes?
That is
Okay.
part of it, yes.
Okay,
And what we've had in the past as well.
okay, all right, fabulous, thank you.
Sorry. Oh, go.
I just have one more question. So throughout all these presentations, we've had a few retirees and, or retiring people. Has that been projected back into the budget as far as rehiring people once these people have retired? Is that part of our budget that we already have?
So you're asking if those positions in that salary has been eliminated because that person's retiring?
Yeah, or
Okay.
is it included in our budget to rehire someone else to take that position once they've retired?
Yes, the budget has been included in the position has been included in the budget at the benefit level and salary of that person leaving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Griffin?
Hello, Mr.
Oh,
Griffin.
excuse me, I'm sorry, I still
Oh,
have a question.
sorry. Sorry, Jason.
I didn't defer out to her completely.
Sorry.
When we're looking at this at the elementary level, is it possible for admin to put together max capacity, optimal capacity? In other words, how many more students can we accept at each elementary school by grade? So what is the optimal student-teacher ratio that we're trying to achieve? And then what's the actual, at least projected, and then what's the delta?
We can certainly take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Hi, Mr. Griffin, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about Auburn Middle School for a few minutes. Very quickly, looking at class sizes and projections, we're sitting at right about 508 students and are projected to increase at this point by 1 student next year. So we're looking at very stable class sizes across 7th and 8th grade. We're averaging 21. That would be the same next year. So I'd like to talk about a couple of proposed staff changes that I'd like to bring forward. One is reducing our social emotional learning interventionist position. That has been unfilled for much of the school year. That position, the person had done some great things. We have a food bank. We have a Falcon Outlet that provides clothing, all this stuff for families. I want to assure you all of that has continued. So there are other members in the school who have taken on those pieces. Other programs in the school, our existing student services staff have been able to fill in all of those pieces. And what I would like to propose we add in place of that position is a new band instrumental music teacher. I believe this is really important, not just for Auburn Middle School, but elementary all through high school. I look at this incredible high school that's being built in the auditorium with the performing arts piece that's going to be there. Right now, the band teacher who works at Auburn Middle School is responsible for 6 schools. So across a week, oftentimes multiple times a day, he travels to Auburn Middle School, to 5 different elementary schools, and it's a credit to that hard work that we have about 20 students in our middle school band. I believe a school about the size of Auburn Middle School should have closer to 100 students in our band. And the addition of this position would help across elementary school, it would help at the middle school, and it would really work to build a much more robust and wonderful program for the high school. So I believe the addition of that position would benefit the entire district. In looking at initiatives next year, continue the full implementation of our math and literacy program. I believe very strongly we're seeing some really positive things in both of those programs. Addition of middle school football. We were approached approximately 3 years ago by the city and the rec department to take over 7th and 8th grade football. Back then, this was right about COVID, everything was really put on hold. We believe we are ready to move forward with that. There's a really close partnership we have with the rec department and the city side. As we've worked to look at all the resources they would be able to share, and this could be done for a relatively small cost. I think it would provide an opportunity for more students in Auburn to participate in football, and that's for both our boys and girls. And that with our school sanctioned sports, they do not have to pay to play, and through the rec department, there had been a pretty significant cost. So I think that would be a great addition. As I've mentioned, improve the band and chorus experience for our students. I would like to add and support an LGBTQ plus alliance group at the middle school, so that would involve a stipend. Enhance the outdoor physical education experience for students, enhance our art experience for students, and continue restorative practices, professional development for all staff, which lines up with work that has begun this year at the high school level. So proposed budgetary changes, if you dig in and look at some specific lines, you would see a few increases. I'd like to highlight just a little bit of that. One is the addition of a few pottery wheels. We have an incredible brand new art room that was part of a major renovation project last summer of our science rooms and art room. The art room was designed to have pottery wheels. I would like to get a few pottery wheels so we can begin doing that. That is an incredible hands-on activity, lifelong thing for middle school students to do. As I mentioned, the addition of football. Our science teachers are working on a revision to their curriculum. They are asking to be able to get some additional hands-on, middle-level activities for lab-based things. I absolutely support that. And then final item on there, Auburn Middle School, I hope everyone's had a chance to visit. We are on an incredible 40-acre campus with trails and everything like that. I would like to purchase a classroom set of snowshoes. So during the winter months, like right now, we could be out and using those trails and get out of that gym and be doing some other things. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Griffin? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, so certain things I just highlighted. First of all, outstanding in the outdoor athletics and recreation. One question, you had a mountain bike program with multiple mountain bikes that were granted. Where are those being stored right now?
Yep, so they're being stored right now. We have hooks. They're in our locker room spaces. They're hung up on the walls. So we're in a pretty good spot with that. And with that, we also have a maintenance plan. We're keeping them updated and everything like that. That has been a fantastic addition to middle school.
Okay, can I also get again, it's probably in this, gigantic book, but a breakdown of anything that in the current school budget that has to do with outdoor recreational purchasing? Because I'm not sure about URSA money, but with our federal ARPA money, that's a qualifying expenditure. So we're already doing that. I'd like to also get it through our rec department to see what we already have for inventory that could be shared during the school week with you, or take it out of the budget, pay for it with a ARPA allotment. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Griffin, I had one question.
Yes.
The reduction of the SEL interventionist, was that an ESSER position or was that a regularly budgeted position?
No, that was a regular budget position.
Regular budget position, okay.
I have a question. I'm very much for the arts, but I just have one question. You said that the person who does the band has to go to 6 different elementary schools. Why?
He goes to 5 different elementary schools and the middle school.
So why is that when, and maybe I'm incorrect here, is there not a music teacher at every elementary school?
Yes, every school has a music teacher.
But they don't do band?
They do not, well, do we have anybody? Yeah, Sherwood Heights is able to fit, the Sherwood Heights music teacher is able to fit that into her schedule.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Clarissa?
I'm curious if is there a staff person for ELL continuity at the middle school?
Yeah, we have a full-time teaching position, and then we also have an ed tech there to support students as they're more integrated in classrooms to offer the push-in support. So a very good program.
So is this one of these, I'm just not sure where that falls on here. Is it one of
Yep,
the
so
interventions? One of the
that would be, so that does not sort of fall on that list. That is a different service provider, but we have a full ELL teacher.
Okay.
And then we also, that program is supported by an ed tech in the program. We have approximately 20 students.
Any other questions?
I have one more question. The SEL, sorry, the SEL interventionist. You know, with COVID, the need for SEL has never been greater. And we're not just talking masking, we're talking every component of COVID has permeated every aspect of our lives and has caused, you know, issues, psychological issues. So if we have a reduction in this, do we have anyone else that's also an interventionist, or is this the only SEL interventionist that you have?
So great question. We have also at the middle school, and this was a position that had just been added in the last couple of years, we have a full-time social worker who has picked up pieces of this. We also have 2 school counselors, and we are fully staffed in that department. And then, though it's unfilled right now, we have an academic interventionist, and then we also have an Ed Tech 3 who is an academic interventionist. So when it comes to that SEL work, which I've said it before, I believe that is incredibly important, you know, and I look particularly at middle school. I believe we are doing a very good thing with how we're doing that. Our school counselors are, you know, and it's been tougher with COVID, but there's planning that they're going to be offering a robust classroom guidance piece. And again, a lot of the pieces, which were incredible, that this SEL interventionist was doing was all around the connecting with families, everything from helping support technology needs, to food, to clothing, to anything else they need. That has not paused. I have made sure that all of that work has absolutely continued. So I want you to hear from me. I absolutely believe in the SEL work, and I would not come forward with such a proposal if we were sacrificing anything.
When you talk about your food bank and your clothes closet, is there a way that the community can help with that?
Again, thank you. And something I've learned in my time here in Auburn is it only takes me once or twice in my Friday family update to send out saying we could use some donations of these things, that the very next school day, folks have lined up with garbage bags full of clothing and new stuff and winter coats. And we have a partnership with local food bank who helps with that, our food service. It's a really cool thing. And again, credit to this community. There have been times I've even reached out asking for athletic gear and field hockey sticks and softball mitts and in less than a day, the community steps up and we get it. So we're always accepting donations, though I can certainly say we are not in need of dire need of anything right now.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Griffin? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Griffin. Hello, Mr. Anier.
Well, good evening. Thank you. It's good to see everyone tonight. I have some statistics in front of you to be able to talk about where we stand currently right now at Edward Little and what we're projecting for next year for student enrollment. So you can see the overall enrollments for 1920 at 920. 2021 was 933, and as of last week, we were at 890. This is usually our low part of the school year. We're about to hit our spring swing, is what I typically call it, where we start to see some numbers come up. And what we're projecting for next year, that 241 in ninth grade, that's what's currently sitting in eighth grade at the Auburn Middle School. So just so you know where that number derives from, ninth grade moves to 10th, 10th to 11th, and 11th to 12th. So that gives you a sense of what we're projecting and where we've been over the last couple of years. Next before you is the number of teachers per academic department. This is very stable compared to where we were last year. In 2021, we had 76 teachers. This current year, we're at 70, and next year we're projecting at 70.5. The difference that you can see is the shift from 7.5 to 8 teachers in the special ed department. That is to really help support and bolster the dynamic programming needs that those students and staff need, and that extra half staff position will make a difference. And the special ed department is already strategizing how to facilitate that for the programming needs. But again, looking down through there, the rest of the numbers stay stable. We are tracking 2 movements this year, a retirement and someone moving out of state at this point in time. The next one really talks about our ed tech positions. You can see in 2021, our ed tech 2 positions, we had 12. This current year, we were at 9. We are currently projecting for 6 to be filled. That's where we sit right now, and what we're hoping to be able to get back to that 9, and that's all about, the hiring process. The ed tech 3s in special ed, they stay stable at 5 across the board. And then in ELL, we have that stayed stable all the way through for the past 2 years, going into this year at 3. They currently have 1 unfilled, and they are pinch hitting left and right and doing a great job at it. But we're still programming for 3 ed tech positions in the ELL program. The next page is really talking about the overall average class size enrollments, and those are averages per department. And so this current school year right now, those numbers are 14 in English, 15 science, 17 social studies, 14 math, 14 fine arts, 14 aspirations. You can read through. One highlight is at the bottom. When you look at the JMG program, they've moved from 5 to 11 this year. That's been a very strong program for us, working with our students, working on their goals in terms of programming for life after high school. So you can see over the last 2 years, our average class size has gone 12, 12, and this year it's up to 13. And you can take those and compare it to the sheet before, which talked about the number of teachers per department.
Scott, can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
On that prior slide, can I just confirm, because there's 2021, okay, never mind. I was confused by the order of the years at the top. But, okay, so we have 2021, they're just out of order?
Yeah.
They're
Okay.
flip them around.
They flipped, sorry.
Okay.
The next piece, because it really drives a whole bunch of class sizes, is to get a sense of some of the courses that we offer. I have a list of the dual enrollment courses offered through UMF for Kent. Our articulated classes are on site. Those are some of our dual enrolled classes with CM, Thomas College, our project SUPA, and then the bridge year classes. And we just discussed that in the curriculum meeting this afternoon to get a sense of the number of classes. And then the AP classes at the bottom. As of August, we offered 250 classes. 96 of them are singletons, which means it's only a 1 offering. And so that really puts pressure on class sizes, because how teachers' schedules are built, they could have a class of 20, and then on the other side, it'll be a class of 12, because one of those is a singleton in order to try to balance out the students' needs and requests. So that average is important to look at, but the number of singletons becomes very important, and that's driven out of student interest and enrollments there. And then another piece to that puzzle is that we have 48 level 4s and 5 classes. A level 5 class is an AP class, and a level 4 class is an honors class. I just wanted to highlight some of those things because they do create pressures onto the schedule and how we build them. Some other areas to highlight, because there are some changes on student supports. We have a nurse, a librarian. This year, remember, we repackaged a previous admin position and created the K-12 guidance director position. And that's been extremely helpful, not only for our building, but to help make a cohesive guidance plan and student service plan throughout the district. And that has allowed us to maintain 4 guidance counselors throughout the building. The other one is the social worker at the bottom. That was a new hiree that we had this year. If you haven't had the chance to meet Corey, he is phenomenal. He's a rock star, and he helps so many of our students in those in-moment situations. We contract with 3 different agencies for social work counseling services, St. Mary's Health Affiliates and Spurwink. But what Corey's able to do is to support those students who aren't already in a caseload situation, and that's been a huge advantage for us for our social emotional learning development for students in the building. And then at the bottom, you'll see that the college and career counselor position was one that we were able to develop this year, and that has already started to make some legwork. We're already planning a college and career night for grades 9 through 11 coming up this spring. That's the evidence of having a K-12 guidance director and having someone purely dedicated to being able to do that. That's allowed us, instead of offering it for one grade level, to expand that and create that awareness for all the grade levels moving ahead, as well as he really specializes in really honing in on the college application process with the students. And currently, right now, they are having a college night at the high school, which is where Mrs. Galway and Blake are currently right now. Those 2 things are highlighted because on the following page, you can see that we had a decrease in our guidance secretary. Because of those 2 additions, they've been able to absorb the work that decrease in that secretarial position. We have 2 professional staff who are taking on many of the tasks that had been assumed, as well as being able to carry out the duties that they were hired for. And the only other switch, the rest of those stay stable. It's the next page where you see the nighttime custodian. We had a gentleman that had retired and then came back as half-time, and so that's been picked up by the evening staff. And then the last page highlights some of the things that we've put in place this year and are looking to move forward with again next year, and that's our the K-12 guidance director, our social work, and our college and career counselors. Now that they have, they're fully on board, and because all of that started to transition after the school year started, now they can hit the ground running on September 1st and get those services happening sooner, and that's been a great advantage for us. We're doing NWEA testing 9 through 11. As you know, grade 11 is when it's used for the MEA, but we're using that as our ability to hone in on what are the needs for all students grades 9 through 11. 12th graders aren't forgotten because their 11th grade test scores are carried over to 12th grade. Our departments, this is the time of year when they start leaning in and digging in, and they've started that process of examining their targets, their standards, their sequences, the courses. Really what this talks about is their curriculum doing what their curriculum is supposed to do, and does it match what they see as the needs that are going on? We're really proud of the work that is going on with our restorative practice and planning and programming. That's been ongoing work. We have a cohort of about 12 teachers who've been meeting on a regular basis to start implementing plans into the building. The mindset is you gotta go slow and steady with that work, and we are being very deliberate with very committed and dedicated people who are using early release time, as well as workshop time, as well as after school time, to bring themselves together to be very slow and deliberate, and do that with staff, and then implement that with the students. We're pleased to be able to bring back our suspension diversion program, and this is available for 7 to 12. Our partnership with the city has allowed us to be able to use space at the YMCA once again, so that when students, a part of changing behavior sometimes has consequences, and rather than them not be engaged in school, this gives us some programming options for them so that they are not away from school. And that work is really important because it allows for academic work to happen when they're not in the building, but they're staying connected to the building. And then one of the other things that is important for us to highlight is you've just had the presentation on the ELPM programming on credit recovery, and typically that was rooted for juniors and seniors. We now have begun the programming for grades 9, 10 to add to that so that we don't wait for a period of time before we start recovering that credit. Sometimes that can be done and absolved within their current schedule, and sometimes the best pathway for them is really to start doing that through the ELPM program. Some areas to highlight and changes in the budget. You saw this past year that they did a literacy deep dive. The literacy group started in that. We're currently doing a deep dive in the math leadership, looking at our math needs, and so there's some instructional supply needs that need to be tied to that. Some of the other areas that you'll see as far as increases are athletic, transportation, and officials. The officials were due up for a new contract, so that was something that is negotiated with the MPA. The transportation, I think, speaks for itself. We had many needs of transporting students and the availability of what we had, so there's a lot of costs that were associated with that. Some increases for PD to attend conferences. This is where they get some very specific content-specific areas with their colleagues around the state. Those PD opportunities have been on hold due to COVID, so now they're back to in-person. So many of my department members are eager to be able to attend those departments that they have historically have attended in the past. We have some graduation costs. Some things naturally went up, as well as what we're planning on had some additional costs due to us having to factor in a rain date, as we're planning on being at Walton Field again on Saturday, June 4th. The time is still up for debate. I can get into that for another time, but we're waiting to hear where the state track meet will be held.
Always.
And then the last one is a real serious one, because you'll see that it's about $165,000 line item that we needed to factor in to be sure to prepare for in the budget for the movement of the materials in the current building to the new building. So we needed to carry that this year, and I've been working with Mr. Conrad quite a bit on that, but that's where you'll see that one. That is one that will jump out at you.
Because that is not in the new EL construction. That is not in the building of the building. This is in addition to. Okay, I just want to be really clear. That is not in the construction. That is, so now we need to move.
I would defer that to Mr. Conrad, but.
No, the state does, that's not an allowable expenditure under the DOE.
Right, I didn't believe so. I just wanted to make sure we reiterated, we stated that one. Go ahead, Pam.
I just have a quick question on your special ed Tech 2. You said that you were hoping to have 9, so are there going to be 3 open positions for that?
I have 3 right
Set.
now.
You do? Okay.
I had 5, but I got a superstar starting on the 14th.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Anair? All right, seeing none. Hello.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me to share some information about Franklin. I wanted to highlight a few of the things going around at our school and also talk to you a little bit about our budgeting for next year. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about our enrollment. Overall enrollment is up. Currently, we have 97 students enrolled, and that is up from 66 at this time last year. Additionally, our tuition student enrollments have also increased. We currently have 13 students enrolled from Lewiston as tuition students, and that's up from 5 at this time last year. So overall enrollment is up. We currently, our class sizes are capped at 15 students per class, making our overall capacity for our program 105 students. As you can see, we're very close to our capacity. We currently have 10 classroom teachers, 1 special educator in our building. One of those teaching positions is currently funded in those ESSER funds this year. And as you saw before, our average class sizes are between that 12 and 15, depending on grade level. So some of the major initiatives going around at Franklin that I use to help plan for next year are to continue our welding training for students through the New England School of Metalcraft. 6 students from Franklin and 6 students from Edward Little High School take part in this program each year. It's been a very valuable program for our students as far as building those skills that they can take with them into the world of work after school. Many of our students also have used that program to prepare them to do other programs like LRTC, those higher level welding training programs. And we have a pretty good success rate as far as students that have done that program being employed as professional welders after the fact. Additionally, supporting our Franklin Work Study program. We are, very set on making sure that our students are prepared to work not only during school, but then after, based on whatever their path may be. That work study program, as I've mentioned in the past, also helps a lot of our students gain additional credits toward graduation. We also partner with a lot of community organizations, so we want to continue our work with partnering with the YMCA for our fitness programs, the Auburn Pal Center to resume our culinary arts program, and working more with our work with local businesses through our partnership with the Chamber. One of the newer things that you'll see through our budget is to increase some offerings for experiential or hands-on learning activities for our students, as well as continuing our staff development work around fostering a trauma-sensitive educational environment. Those two initiatives or those two focus areas are there because they are proven to be one of the best ways to meet the needs of the students that we see at Franklin. So lastly, major changes in our budget. Some of them relate directly back to those initiatives. Overall, many of our costs have gone up across the board just because of additional enrollment. There's additional funding for those instructional materials that would support that experiential and hands-on learning. There was a slight increase in the tuition for our welding program. That's another place that you'll see an increase. Additionally, we have a brand new art teacher that came on this year after a retirement. She has been offering some really new and innovative art programs for our students that they're really responding to, including some digital art offerings. Along with that, there has been a requirement for some additional resources for her to continue that work with our students. As far as decreases, we were able to reduce some of our costs this year as we shifted to the NWEA as our benchmarking test, as opposed to the CASAS, which we had purchased in the past. But those are really the only major changes that you would see in our program. Thank you.
Any questions? Pat?
Is the total number of students 97, and then you have 13?
Nope, they're
tuition?
included in that 13.
They're included
Yep.
in the 97, and all, I probably shouldn't ask this question. Does all of that tuition money go directly into your program, or does it go through?
That, Mr. Conrad is better.
I believe it falls into our general revenue.
Any other questions for Franklin? Mr. Mayor?
Just follow up. Could you give us a little bit more at a later point history on how many students have attended the welding program?
Sure.
And even if you have any follow-up post they're attending the welding program, how many have stayed in field and so forth, as well as kind of what the projected costs are going to be. I see there's going to be an increase.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and those, the
and
actual.
how many students are enrolled today, I guess.
Yep.
I propose, yeah.
So there's always 12. It's always 6 from Franklin and
Okay.
6 from Edward Little. Edward Little funds their own tuition for those students. And the actual cost for the program this year is in, I know it's a big book.
It's a big book.
It's in
It's in the
there
big
with
book
it.
somewhere, right?
It's in
Okay.
there. So yeah, definitely.
Got it. 6
But
to 6.
we have been tracking more anecdotally as far as our success rates of those students that graduate from that program, but that's something that should be relatively easy for me to follow up on.
Anecdotal's great. Okay, just as long as it's around.
I know we have
with good
2 at
sample size.
VIW right now, welding, so it's pretty cool.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you so much.
So to conclude the budget presentation for the evening, I put up as the last slide the calendar. So beginning, obviously this was Article 1. Next week we will present Cost Center 2, or Article 2, which is special education. Cost Center 4, which is our athletics. Cost Center 5, which will include technology and student support in the Office of the Assistant Superintendent for Academic Affairs, Curriculum and Instruction. Any closing questions or comments for this portion of the budget?
Will Mr. Davis be coming to present for Walton next week?
I hope so. We can add him in.
Okay, that was my question. Any other questions from the committee?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm not sure if this is the right time, so I'll just ask it.
Yep.
One thing I noticed is that there's an overall, I think we talked about this before, an overall decline of 300 students since 2018.
Yes.
I was just wondering if we could have some information on how that compares to how much the staffing levels?
We would need to go back to the staffing levels from 2018, and we will endeavor to find out what those enrollments look like. I can tell you that the initiative from last year to have lower class sizes figures pretty prominently into those ratios.
Any other questions? Final remarks. Thank you all. I know what took just over an hour to present took hours and hours and hours to pull together. So thank you all very much for kicking off the budget season for us. All right, moving along. School committee student rep report. Abby's here this evening. Hi, Abby.
So there's nothing for tonight. I never received the slideshow.
Okay.
So-
Okay, just making sure. All right, I didn't want to not give you space if you had something. All right, superintendent's report, Dr. Brown.
Thank you very much. I will keep it short, given the hour. The first thing is that in your packet is the press release that we sent out announcing the collaboration with the City of Auburn and the Auburn School Department for transportation, maintenance, and custodial services. We're off to a great start. We met with the team on Monday out at Industry Ave. It went really well. We checked in again with some of our drivers today, and again, the feedback was very, very positive. I'm in the process of reviewing an MOA that the city's attorney has prepared, and we'll take a look at that and bring it back to the school committee at a future date. I would say probably 2 weeks. So that was one item. The only other item is that I would like to let you know that earlier this week, Mr. Conrad, Dr. Doris, and I met with the Maine Department of Education at their behest to talk about ESSER funds and the revisions that we have requested regarding premium pay. The department was very supportive and accommodating, and I think got their questions answered. And so we hope that by the end of this month, the end of March, we will be able to receive that approval and then process those premium payments. Any questions on that?
An MOA, is that like a contract that we're going to have with the city, or what is that?
It's exactly that. It's a memorandum of agreement.
Okay, I wondered if we were going to if we had to approve that.
I have started, or do bring all contracts of that magnitude before the school committee.
Okay.
That was, so I would say by the 16th, I think, which is the next meeting, we'll have that ready.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Brown? Pam?
I just have a question. How does this collaboration with the city help the maintenance side of? I can understand how it helps the bus driver side and, the snow removal, all of that outside work. But as far as like the inside maintenance work, do we have people who are on the city side that are able to help the school side, or, vice versa?
It's a great partnership, Pam, because one of the things that we don't have on the school side would be tradespeople. So we don't have electricians, and we don't have some of those trades that the city either does have or will have. And so we'll be able to access that. Right now, we outsource all of those services. So we're hoping that as this collaboration goes forward, things even possibly like an HVAC position might be something that the school department and the city could share. But the city also has some depth regarding fields and maintenance and other things that are done in the city that we can now collaborate with them. So it's a really good start to what I see as a very positive partnership.
Thank you. Sure. Any other questions, Larissa?
In terms of that program that came up earlier for the bus routes, I was just curious, now that this different organization is going to happen, are we still thinking of getting that, or are we going to wait for to see how this new management situation goes, or is it going to be in that? I'm just curious about that.
I think it's something we definitely need to take a look at. The system that we have right now is not digitized. We don't have great data on where students are, what their addresses are, and it's difficult to move around, and we have one person who is the keeper of all of that information. So in a system of this size, and actually in a system of any size, to have one person responsible for those routes and names and processes, I think that would expose the city. So we'll take a look at the software. The software has been upgraded. Mr. Conrad, I think the DOE is coming out with a new package.
Yes, I think within the next 6 months, they'll be bidding it out. So I had a conversation today, actually, with the new staff in place about talking to the Director of Transportation for the DOE, Pat Hinckley, to get a handle on when they're looking at bidding that out. And the reason we'd be interested in that is that software would be free to us, at least for the ongoing costs beyond the initial installation. So they'll be taking a look at that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, Pam?
Yes, can you reiterate the EPS and how that affects the monies that come from the state if, since we've gone into collaboration with the city, our EPS amounts will not be affected, is that correct?
That is correct. What we've entered into is a management contract with the City of Auburn. All of our employees are still Auburn employees, Auburn School Department employees, and so we would continue to represent those costs under the EPS formula.
I just wanted to make double sure that was happening.
Sure, absolutely. Any other questions? All right, seeing none. No school committee chairperson's report this evening. City council update?
No.
Mayor? None. All
None.
right, moving on. Committee reports, standing committees, policy committee, subcommittee met. You have the agenda and the minutes there, which will help you to make decisions coming up in policy, as well as the curriculum subcommittee met. They just met prior to this meeting, so on your next school committee agenda, you will have the minutes, as well as the health and safety subcommittee met as well. You have the agenda and their minutes there as well were added, so they were just added. Pam, I'm going to ask you, since you have a presentation this evening, I believe, on this, it's right up that way, so I'm going to turn it over to you. As I understand, you are you have been the elected chair of this? Okay. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to you,
Just a
Pam.
question. Are we going to do this now under committees, or as I see it as an agenda item directly after?
I think you should have the information up front before we even consider, I was going to say, tell me what makes sense. If it makes sense, you have the information, what they discussed last night, and their proposal before I can even, before knowing what the recommendations are. Makes sense in my mind.
Get the chair.
Okay, all right. But if it doesn't make sense in anyone else's mind, speak up. All right, so I'm turning it over to you, Pam.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think Dr. Doris is handing out slides of this presentation for you all to have. So we wanted to share with you some of the data and information reviewed and discussed by the Health and Safety Committee to provide context as to how we determined the recommendations we have for our committee to consider this evening. Our newly reformed Health and Safety Committee met for the first time yesterday and is now comprised of a variety of individuals as stipulated by membership guidelines outlined by Maine state statute. These are our current committee members. We have Dr. Doris, Assistant Superintendent, myself as school committee member and epidemiologist, Pam Hart, school committee member and respiratory therapist, Dr. Daniel Rausch, CMMC physician and parent of children in the district, Courtney Pierce, Auburn sixth grade teacher and AEA representative, Beth St. Laurent, the Auburn School District school team nurse lead, Celeste Bodette for Fairview principal, Scott Anier, EL principal, Corey Jameson, EL social worker, and Matt Fifield, the City of Auburn deputy fire chief. The purpose of our committee is to formulate plans and provide recommendations to the school committee on health and safety matters. Our specific task yesterday was to review our current COVID plan, current data, and make recommendations regarding our mask policy to the school committee. To do so, it's first important to understand where we currently are as a district by visualizing our own school district COVID data. This chart shows the distribution of cases year to date by school building. As one might expect, the highest number of cases have been seen in school buildings with the largest populations. As of February 18th, we have had 431 total COVID cases, 381 students and 50 staff.
It is important to note that these counts are inclusive of lab-confirmed and pooled testing results only. They do not include positive at-home test results reported to the school district, so are therefore an underreporting of our total cases. That is because while we accept a positive test result from an at-home test in terms of absence and providing guidance regarding isolation and return to school protocols, the Maine CDC does not accept at-home test results nor count them as positive cases in their case counts. However, at-home positive tests are included in school absenteeism reports that are reported to Maine CDC and the DOE. This chart shows the trend of all district cases, both students and staff, by school year week for the 2021-22 school year to date, and is really, I think, the more important and useful of the two charts as it provides a trend over time. As you can see on this chart, there are several peaks in weekly case counts, specifically the week following the implementation of pooled testing in week 12, the 2 weeks following Thanksgiving break, and the second week of January, which was the second week back to school after the holiday break, shown in week 19. We also reviewed various county-level metrics and have included some important highlights of those here. Past 14-day percent positivity has decreased significantly since early February, from almost 16% positivity to 6.4% as of February 24th, which is similar to rates we saw in the fall. Our current county-level vaccination rate is 71% as of February 7th. That's inclusive of those with at least one dose of any of the 3 approved vaccines. And local wastewater testing, which is an early indicator of whether the number of people with COVID in a community is increasing or decreasing, has shown significant decreases in the past month, from 2.5 million effective virus particles per liter on February 1st to 145,000 effective virus particles per liter on February 24th. When considering removing any public health mitigation strategy, we also felt it was important to understand all of the various mitigation strategies the Auburn School District are currently using, including the daily symptom screener, which is a checklist of COVID symptoms for families to monitor in order to keep kids home who are symptomatic. Improved ventilation. As Dr. Brown included in the letter she sent out to the district earlier this year, ventilation and filtration assessments were performed in 371 rooms in 10 buildings. Most rooms exceeded the 5 to 7 hourly air exchanges as recommended, and rooms that did not meet the minimum standard were repaired by the ASD HVAC contractor. The Auburn School District also continues to provide pooled testing district-wide, with 954 students and 146 staff currently enrolled as of this week. And as we all know, universal masking has been in place since earlier this fall, following the recommendations of the Maine CDC and DOE SOP to reduce transmission, keep as many students and staff in the building as possible, and reduce the number of students who needed to quarantine. As of January 4th, per an update in that SOP, contact tracing and quarantine of close contacts was no longer required if a universal mask policy was in place. This was a welcome change, as it provided much relief to the burden on our school nurses and building administrators who are conducting time-consuming and arduous contact tracing follow-up. Vaccination is another important mitigation strategy. Currently, ages 5 and older are eligible for vaccination, which includes most of our school-age children in the Auburn School District, except for some in pre-K. The current vaccination rate for ages 5 through 18, excuse me, in Auburn Public Schools is estimated to be 60 to 64%. And this chart shows the vaccination rate of Auburn School District staff by building. These data were collected between August and October of 2021 by the Maine DOE, and the highest rate within that 3-month period for each school is reported on this chart. Overall, we have a very high level of vaccination among our district staff. We also reviewed the new US CDC COVID-19 community levels and indicators that were released last Friday, what they mean and how to interpret them. Previously, the US CDC used community transmission indicators such as positivity rates and new daily cases that were largely driven by case incidents, did not differentiate between mild and significant disease, and did not account for strain on the healthcare system. The US CDC wanted to create a metric that will now shift the focus from transmission to minimizing the impact of severe COVID illness on health and society by preventing medically significant illness and minimizing the burden on our healthcare systems while still protecting vulnerable populations. These COVID community levels are meant to inform recommendations for community level preventative strategies and individual preventive behaviors. At higher COVID-19 community levels, recommendations include masking, testing strategies such as pooled testing, and setting specific recommendations for K through 12 schools. Currently, Androscoggin County's community COVID level is listed as high due to the reported 566 cases per 100,000 population in the past 7 days. That's as of February 28th. The 9.24 new COVID hospital admissions per 100,000 population in the past 7 days, and the 4.3% staffed inpatient beds in use by patients with confirmed COVID in the past 7 days. However, there is a caveat that is important to note, which was acknowledged by Dr. Shaw in his interview on yesterday's Maine Calling, that the elevated case rates seen in many counties across Maine is due to the backlog of cases Maine CDC is still working through and do not necessarily reflect the actual reported daily positive cases. It is expected Maine CDC will be working through the remainder of this backlog in the next few weeks. Following that, these community COVID levels should more accurately reflect what is occurring in our county. Also, we reviewed, excuse me, the recent changes to the Maine CDC DOE standard operating procedure as of February 16th, which uncoupled universal masking policies and contact tracing and quarantining of students. However, per clarification from Maine CDC, if it is not feasible for schools to conduct contact tracing, it is the responsibility of the family of the positive student to notify any close contacts and for those individuals to quarantine for 5 days if not vaccinated and not participating in pooled testing. So, getting to our summary and considerations, we felt as a committee that decisions have been made and should continue, decisions have been and should continue to be data-driven. There was concern over making decisions hastily and having to backtrack. The committee agreed that public health metrics are moving in the right direction to consider changing to optional masking with a continuing and sustained decline in school district case counts and county positivity rates, as well as potential movement within the CDC COVID community levels as the Maine CDC works through its case backlog in the coming weeks. The committee felt public health metrics need to be considered on which to base reinstating mask use either district-wide or by building if necessary. And there was a discussion around what some of those metrics could be. The community also felt there's a need to have an operationalized plan in place by 3/16 for tracking COVID positive students upon their return to school on days 6 through 10 to ensure they stay properly masked as required by the SOP while also maintaining confidentiality. This is particularly important in our larger school buildings like AMS and EL, where students are moving throughout the building regularly during the day. We also felt we needed to ensure access to high quality and size appropriate masks for medically vulnerable students and staff who may need or want them. Which brings me to our recommendations for us to consider tonight. The committee was in agreement that we should reassess all metrics at our next meeting on March 15th to provide updated recommendations to move to optional masking to be considered by the school committee at our next regular meeting on March 16th. This would allow for 2 full weeks of school district case data to ensure there is no post-school vacation spike. Additionally, the committee recommends maintaining all other mitigation strategies that are currently in place. And lastly, we agreed that Superintendent Brown should maintain the ability to make real-time changes to masking policy if necessary. Oh, and lastly, I will, did you?
I did not.
So hot off the press today, the Mills administration announced an update to the school and child care masking recommendations, indicating that effective March 9th, universal masking will no longer be a statewide recommendation in school settings, but is optional. So that was hot off the press today, which obviously we did not have that information when we met yesterday.
And this is strictly kind of, do you think had you had that information, you would have stuck?
I don't want to speak for the committee entirely, but I do feel like we had a strong conversation about wanting to have 2 weeks worth of school district data in order to make sure that we didn't see a post-vacation spike like we did after Christmas break. And There was also a lot of discussion about, again, not wanting to make decisions hastily and then having to backtrack, which would be very difficult, and also wanting to make sure that we have those operationalized plans in place for how we are going to track students when they return to school on those days 6 through 10 when they have to be masked.
Okay. Any questions for the Health and Safety Committee? Jason?
Yeah, first of all, comment, this is phenomenal. Next time we have a pandemic, please do this for the municipal side too, okay? Hopefully that's never.
Amen.
Wait, we all get paid. Just a couple questions if I could, looking at this. Did you at all in your committee discuss the cons of mask wearing at the elementary and high school level? And if so, is there a matrix in which you compared the pros of wearing a mask versus the cons of wearing a mask? In other words, drug overdose deaths, et cetera, and so forth.
So we did discuss kind of the social emotional side of masking, and that was brought up by our clinical social worker. Basically, there was a lot of discussion and concern around both stress around, well, he felt that we will not know the true outcome of any of the stressors of the pandemic for many years. But he also did talk about how there was concern, there's stress among children, both with masking and moving to not masking. There are children who are very concerned about spreading it, taking it home to their families, to their younger siblings who might not be vaccinated, to grandparents, things like that. So there's also stress on that side as well.
On that same line, so on that topic, how many hospitalizations and or deaths have been attributed to either, well, directly to students, parents, or close contact with infected students?
In our district, I wouldn't have that information.
Okay, I mean, we do, we know for, or at least that first level students and staff.
If you could share the main numbers, we don't have that data for our district.
Have any students died in the last 12 months?
In our district?
Yes.
I wouldn't have that information.
Okay, have any staff passed away?
We have had staff members pass.
I don't need names, I just need accounts.
You know, we don't have the reasons for that.
But we've had staff members pass?
In the last year?
No. Okay.
Last year?
Since the pandemic started.
You're saying we have had staff members pass. Are you asking if
due to
they have
COVID-19?
passed due to COVID? Is that what you're asking?
We don't know the reason? Okay. Yes, I'm asking that.
Okay, that's.
Well, I want to know how we could directly correlate mask wearing with prevention and safety.
I just wanted to make sure we understood your question. When you asked if we have any staff members pass, the answer is yes.
No, directly or related to COVID-19, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No. So on that one last question, if I could, have you discussed it's a little ambiguous, but the trust factor? So I see people in this room, out in the community, at hockey games, at restaurants, and they're with their children, with other children, 6 inches apart, not wearing a mask. But then we're forcing this, and I would say just for modeling of behavior, I don't think we're having good compliance with mask wearing with probably any of our schools. I don't see that changing. I only see that getting worse. Is there a trust due to this lack of effective modeling in and outside of the school environment? Are we actually teaching our children that, the next time this happens, it's probably not that serious? I almost think about the boy who cried wolf.
Not sure.
I mean, it's human nature.
I think that outside of the school day, families make their own decisions and choices about behaviors outside of school. In the school building, it's our job to protect students and keep them healthy and safe and in the building. I think that has been our primary goal this year, and that has also, up to this point, been why we are following the Maine CDC SOP. And with universal masking, it allowed us to keep everybody in the building, which was our primary goal.
Okay.
Did any other questions for Pam? Clarissa?
I was wondering so supposing we were to go to non-masking, if a student who is immunocompromised or a at-risk staff person wears an N95 mask, how safe are they, even if they're surrounded by people who are making
There has
Some
been.
masked, some unmasked.
There has been recent research, in fact, an MMWR came out by the CDC recently within the past month showing the reduction in risk to people who wear different types of masks, and they looked at surgical masks, they looked at KN95 masks and N95 masks, and there was a significant reduction in risk to the wearer in all of those situations, which was why it was part of the discussion that we felt it was important that for anyone who wants to continue wearing a mask, that we, as a school district, make sure that high-quality masks are available to those people who want them.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nope.
I just wanted to make a comment that this Health and Safety Committee, it was comprised of a lot of medical people, a lot of people from our community. There was a lot of thoughtful dialogue. There was a lot of discussion of every aspect of COVID and how it's affected us, as well as masking and strategies. And I just felt that it was quite an advantage to be able to have a health and safety committee that's comprised of all of these different people. We're very fortunate that that dialogue occurred, and I think that the decision that was made based on this committee's recommendations were not made on feelings or opinions or any of that. It was all data-driven. Everything that was done was based on data, and the CDC, the DOE. So I just wanted to state that all of the decisions were made based on data.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
I think I will just say we all agreed that we are right there. We are so close. And we don't want to create a situation in any of our buildings unnecessarily by doing something too hastily without having the data to support it.
So just a clarifying question, you are in these recommendations right now, you are asking to, where masking is not optional, masking will remain until March 15th, when you would look at, whatever, if it's our pool testing, you would look at those pieces until March 15th, and your next meeting is March 15th?
Yes. Technically, our next meeting is actually the first week of April, but we have scheduled another meeting 2 weeks from yesterday in order to look at all of that 2 weeks worth of data again so that we can provide new recommendations at our next official school committee meeting to move to optional masking.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have that. I just want to make sure I have that clear. So when you reviewed the plan, nothing in the plan was removed as far as following CDC guidelines, Maine DOE guidelines. None of that was removed from the plan. That is all still part of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which I just find and I'm sorry that this news came out at 1 o'clock this afternoon.
Right.
I really am, because the DOE has updated their guidelines.
I mean, ultimately, we did leave in that the superintendent would maintain the ability to make changes to modify or reverse. So, I mean, ultimately, it could still sit with Dr. Brown to make a change or decision based on Maine CDC guidance.
I believe, too, that the decision to wait, we all, like Pam said, we all agree that we're all headed in the right direction, and all of us are not opposed to taking, not doing universal masking. None of us are opposed to taking masks off or making them optional. I think our biggest concern was if there is a spike, or if all of a sudden things start going the wrong way and we have to reinstate masks, we just want a clear-cut, concrete reason for why we take away the universal masks and why we'd have to put them back. We just don't want to be yo-yoing back and forth. Don't mask our kids, don't mask our kids, mask our kids, don't mask our kids. So we're trying to avoid any failure in that, and we just want to be thoughtful at the process. And that's why we decided the committee decided to wait those 2 weeks, because also if you look at our data, and if you look at just our data, not even, the state data or the backlog or anything, if you just look at our Auburn school data, you will see on that slide that there has been a peak after every vacation. So after Thanksgiving break, we had a peak. After Christmas break, we had a peak. So the fact that we just had a vacation where a lot of people went on vacation, I was not one of them, unfortunately, but that's why, that was another reason for waiting, is to see if there was going to be a spike in cases.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the Health and Safety Committee?
Not a question. I just think that we should table this debate until we get into the. We have the recommendation. I think we should go into old business, because I think there's some public here that probably would love to talk to about this, and
Absolutely.
I'm sure we'll have
We
more
did
debate,
public
more
comment.
questions.
We did take public comment on it already.
Not on the consider recommendations. That too. Okay, sorry, I missed that part.
We did. I'll open it back up again.
No, I mean, point of order, actually.
I will.
You did, and that was an open session. This is a public comment coming up with the next agenda item. So
So we
public
can open
session
it back
is,
up.
yeah.
We'll open it back
Because
up.
it's different than just,
Public, yes. Abby?
So would masking be optional for all staff and students regardless of vaccination status, or would it be just if they are vaccinated?
When we would move to optional masking, it would be for everyone.
Okay. Clarissa?
I'm just, this consideration about ensuring access to high-quality masks, does that exist already, or would that be like a huge, I can't remember.
So the deputy fire chief indicated that the city of Auburn has plenty of supplies and also could acquire whatever we needed in a very short amount of time. So those could easily be in place.
The other consideration too is, as Pam had stated, as far as if someone is positive and is out for 5 days and then comes back, how are we going to assure that that student wears a mask for the next 6 days and not just taking off the mask and risking more and more children missing school? So that was another consideration, and we spoke to Mr. Anir, who is the principal of the biggest school, and that was something that we were trying to look at as far as how to regulate that and how to track that.
Pat?
Keep referring to this plan that you're going to have in place. When is that? When you're actually going to do that? Is somebody already working on that plan?
Yeah, so it would be, the schools would have plans in place to track that by the 16th.
yeah, Madam Chair, can we move into the
We
next
sure
business
can.
item? Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. Moving on, old business. Motion to consider recommendations from the Health and Safety Committee. Can I have a motion? Thank you, Pat. And a second?
Second.
Pam. All right, I'm going to open up to public comment. If anyone would like to speak, if you haven't spoken yet to masking and you would like to come up to the podium, speak to masking, please come on up, or if you would like to add a comment to something you've already said. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the debate piece. Questions, comments, debates. You've asked lots of questions, which I think needed to be
Madam Chair, I'd like
yes.
to start off on just a point of clarification. Supporting this motion would then basically support the recommendations. Opposing this order or motion would then default back to what we currently have on the books, which is the superintendent's responsibility, correct? Or it's the power lies with the superintendent to make the decision on her own without school board authorization.
Absolutely. So I printed the plan, and to further answer that question, it says based on current CDC guidelines.
Correct. But the new
And DOE.
plan, point 3, that's up on the screen right now, superintendent maintains ability to make changes, modify, reverse as necessary. So even though we adopt their recommendations, it still can be overruled by the superintendent.
Absolutely.
Based upon current CDC guidelines, which were published today at 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we're all clear on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I do. One thing, right now I'm gonna be opposed to this recommendation. While I do appreciate the data that was selected to use, I think we have to acknowledge, and I would like to remind everyone that I believe that the data was selected and carefully selected in order to prove a narrative and wasn't inclusive of all the data and the body of evidence that's out there. If it was, we probably would have seen some decision-making points on this presentation. I think it's very clear looking around the public. Unfortunately, this is it's turned into a political question and a political move, and that's been there a long time. Again, I'll vote against this simply because I believe our superintendent should be the one that weighs all the evidence, all the data points equally and fairly, and makes that decision based upon the overall benefit of the school, and the students.
And I will say that while I appreciate your comment, and I do absolutely understand, Mr. Mayor, I think as far as it's a lot of pressure to put on one person. So, however, it is in this plan to do. So, Dr. Brown, let me kind of put you on the spot for a moment. It has always been in the plan that you maintain the ability to make changes. You have made changes in the past when that needed to be done, and I am sort of just thinking back to when you had to make those changes. I guess what I'm trying to say is you're very thoughtful if you need to make the change, if you need to make any type of I'm just thinking if you've been very thoughtful and looking through DOE and CDC guidelines. I don't think you've gone rogue on anything yet on us. So I am pleased that sentence stayed in there and stayed as part of the plan. Dr. Brown is in our schools. She's in our schools, and
Madam
she knows
Chair, can we just ask Dr. Brown,
on.
can we bring the question? Is there a question? Or is there a debate?
It is a question to the superintendent about the pressure that puts on you to feel like you are the sole person who gets to decide. And is that, no, I'm withdrawing the question. No, there is no question. All right, ladies and gentlemen, any other questions, comments, or debate? Clarissa?
Yeah, I guess I'm still a little bit confused about what we're
So you are
deciding.
looking at right now, the plan right now is to, based on the plan that was created back on September 15th or approved on September 15th, 2021. And I flipped specifically to masking and distancing, which right now our plan states that masking and distancing protocols will be implemented based on current CDC guidelines, Maine DOE guidelines, community transmission rates, and specific COVID-19 cases in each school. That's where masking decisions will be followed. So what is coming up and what is the recommendation from the committee that met yesterday was to actually, I believe, not right now listen to the information that came out today, but rather to hold masking until 2 weeks past our vacation time. That makes sense? Do I have it right in my head?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to amend the order as presented to read that mandatory masking will be removed from our students or be optional for our students effective on, it was March
9th.
9th, thank you. March 9th, which is Wednesday of next week, in compliance with the CDC's recommendation.
Okay, so help me with Robert's rules for just a minute. We had a motion and a second to the original.
Do you have I made a motion to amend. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
So the original motion,
It's right now, it's just up for a vote. So, and I'll explain this. By default, it comes back to me for making the motion.
so we have a motion for so it's sort of like honestly, almost like a friendly amendment. You're changing the date.
No, it's a motion.
It's a motion.
It would actually
Okay.
change the text of the recommendation.
Okay.
So this is not friendly.
Questions, comments,
This is
debate on
unfriendly.
that?
Well, it defers out to me because I made the motion first. Basically, we need to be, if this entire pandemic, we have been always following the recommendations as rule from CDC. We can't go back and look at their recommendation now to end masking and say, no, we're not going to follow your recommendation when we have always followed their recommendation as rule. So that's why we need to follow their CDC's recommendation as rule at this point in order to be consistent.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I know it's hot off the press. I mean, this work is great. It absolutely is. And I do apologize that it came out at 1 o'clock. But again, we said we'd follow the data. We said we'd rely on the CDC guidelines, and the CDC guidelines clearly state in that memo that it is moving to optional masking on 3/9. And I don't see waiting till 3/16. You know, and nothing against the basketball program, because my girls have loved watching basketball. But when I hear from parents that people are just using lollipops as ways to not wear masks, it's a problem. It's like the mayor said, you know, it's trust factor now. You know, people are not wearing N95 masks. They're not wearing the appropriate masks. They're not wearing them properly. I think moving back to an optional is where we need to be. That way it fits the people who certainly want to wear them, and there's also folks that don't want to wear them. From my perspective, when we first looked at optional, this is more of a testimony, but my wife told me there's absolutely no way my girls are going to wear a mask regardless of what you do. I said, okay. I presented the question to her the other day because I knew this was coming up, and she said, no, I want them to go to school without a mask so that they can learn, because it's time. And again, I think we'd be doing to wait beyond that 3/9 date. It doesn't make sense to me. Again, if we're following the guidelines, we should be using the 3/9 date, and we should amend that just like we're talking here.
So I will follow that up by saying I too believe that we have always stayed the course with following the CDC and DOE guidelines. We have based plans on those recommendations. So with that, if there are no more questions, comments, I'm going to.
I have one other question.
Yep.
I'm just curious, I just want to be clear, so does this mean that, I'm just curious, there's some things that weren't clear in what was considered. So one thing was metrics on which to reinstate. Does this amendment mean that we continue to follow CDC moving forward as well? That's not in the amendment?
If I could, this amendment is only stipulating on this one order. Okay, so it's that we implement optional mask wearing on the date recommended by the Maine CDC, but it doesn't supersede anything in the future, if that's your question.
So the Maine CDC has stated that if the Maine CDC detects a concerning increase in the virus that poses a risk to the state's hospital capacity, or if a new variant poses a new and previously unforeseen risk to the health of Maine people, then it may decide to offer new recommendations. So that's where the CDC is at. All right, we ready? Kat?
Sorry, go ahead.
I just
Please
want
wait to be
to
recognized.
say that
Okay.
if you count from February 28th until March 9th, that's 10 days. And I think that's enough time for us to know if it's going to spike.
And at that point, the superintendent maintains the ability to modify or change as necessary based on our data in our buildings, in our pool testing, in our schools. Okay. All right, I'm going to, Pam?
I was just going to say, so the 10 days, well, I think it is a reasonable amount of time. Generally, we get our pool testing results back. We get the initial pool testing results back around Wednesday for our first pools. And that will tell us whether or not a pool is positive. It doesn't necessarily tell us if we have how many positive students yet. So the 9th, next week, we would potentially know positive pools, not necessarily number of cases. And I think that was, certainly I think none of us anticipated that the Maine CDC was going to come out with new recommendations so soon. Even in Dr. Shaw's main calling yesterday, he did not allude to recommendations changing and coming out today. He made it sound like more like a couple of weeks, and wanting to see stability in numbers. So I think that was the committee's biggest concern, was making sure that we all agreed the numbers are moving in the right direction. I think the data that I presented demonstrated that. And no one was truly opposed, I think, to moving to optional masking. We just wanted to make sure that the numbers support it.
Okay.
Meeting adjourned.
Move, Pam?
Also, the data that we used was not picked out for our narrative. It was used, we used the CDC and the DOE, and we used the same information that we have followed throughout all of this. As you stated, Mr. Mayor, if we're going to follow the CDC, we should continue to follow the CDC and those recommendations. That is the data that Mrs. Albert used. It wasn't cherry-picked to fit a narrative or a political.
And I stand corrected. I apologize. Just your interpretation of the data did not match up with the CDC's interpretation of the same data.
Well, the
So,
CDC, now remember, we didn't have that CDC letter
you didn't
until
have
today
all
at
the
1
data
o'clock.
you didn't have all the data that the CDC had going into their decision-making
Yes,
today?
and we used that.
So you did have all that data, and you
We
came
don't-
up with a different
we don't
conclusion.
have all the data that the Maine CDC has. We have what's available on.
So they have different data
public-
points?
Not necessarily different data points, but they have a lot of data that we don't necessarily have access to.
Okay, so I take that back. I'm sorry, you weren't selective. They just had more data, and they came up with a conclusion today. That was different than yours, based upon more data, as you just said, so.
It's not necessarily different than ours, it's just sooner than ours.
Yeah.
Than what we discussed yesterday.
Jason, can you state your motion again for clarification,
The motion,
please?
9th. The motion is for optional masking to be implemented on March 9th,
All right, I'm
2022.
going to call for a vote.
Can I just have one question to that? What if there's a spike in cases before the 9th? What are we to do?
You
Dr.
default to the
Brown
superintendent.
maintains the ability to
Okay.
make changes, modify, reverse as necessary. That is still part of that plan.
Okay.
All right, I'm calling for a vote. All those in favor for Jason's motion, optional masking beginning March 9th, all those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion passes. Thank you all. I do appreciate all the hard work that you folks have put into this. It really, I know, spent hours working into it. So beginning March 9th.
Hey, Karen.
Hours,
We
yes.
still have to
You
vote.
gotta
You
vote.
have to still vote on
Oh, still have to
the,
vote on the other one, sorry.
yes, for the other recommendations.
No, it's right here.
Sorry. All right, so the original motion still stands. The first, hold on, I've moved
As
on
amended.
already.
The amended motion.
Yeah, the motion is amended.
Motion is amended. So the motion as amended, so you amended the date, and now we're going to amend,
No, now you just
Now you just
vote on the
vote.
amended motion. or
oh, vote
motion
on the
as
amended
amended.
motion. All right, all those in favor of the amended motion, right?
You just call the vote.
Motion passes. Yeah, now can I keep scrolling? Am I good now? Have I finished it, buttoned it all up? I think so. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go on. Motion B. So I will, so let's just state for clarification purposes, March 9th, beginning March 9th, optional, unless Dr. Brown needs to make different changes. All right, March 9th, optional. All right, moving on. Motion to reconsider the naming rights for the new Edward Little Auditorium to be $400,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Clarissa. Pam, you want to add just a little bit? There was just add a little
Yes.
bit before we
Yes.
make a decision?
So the group that would like to name the auditorium is able to come up with 400,000. Our amount was 500,000. But also, I would also like to explain that this group has also, in the past, donated nearly $100,000 in scholarships. So this is a group that has been part of, it's a previous class, and they would like the naming rights to this auditorium. And I feel that not many people have come up and offered us such an amount of money, and I think it's a pretty significant amount, and I think that it would be in our best interest to name, to give them the rights to this.
Okay, so I can have a motion to reconsider the naming rights, please. We did that, so.
Or to lower the amount
To lower the amount to
400,000.
400,000. So what you're saying is that they've given,
They're able to
Okay.
give us 400,000, and I'd like the amount to be lowered to 400,000 so that we can offer this to them.
Not the class of 92. Not the class of 92.
No, it's not.
No.
all right.
Got
Any questions, comments, Pat?
Before I came back on the board, had you approved the whole list? Is that why we have to vote?
So, yeah, so we had initially approved the auditorium, because the original list, and I don't know if you were on the board or not, I think it was right after, was for the auditorium to be $1 million and the gymnasium to be 500,000. So then we re-amended it to have it equal to the gym, because that just made sense. So we had it down to 500. Since being on on the fundraising committee. And of course, during COVID, which is almost impossible to fundraise during COVID, the only really group that has come up to us with such a significant amount can come up with 400,000. And that's why I'm asking the school committee to lower the amount so that we can offer it to them.
I think we all have to stand up. Just stand up for a second. Come back on.
I don't know why Wednesdays that stretch does this.
All right, we're gonna do it in the dark.
Does it work with the clapping?
All right, so let's take a vote. All those in favor of reconsidering the naming rights to the Little Auditorium to be 400,000. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion passes. All right, thank you. Absolutely. All right, moving on to new business. Can I entertain a motion for the first reading of policy AUB-BBA, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pat. Questions, comments, debate on that one? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Motion first reading of policy AUB-BBAA. Can I entertain a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Brian. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pam. Questions, comments, debate on that one?
It's easier for the person doing the minutes.
Mrs. Hart, Mrs. Albert. All right, all those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. Can I entertain a motion for first reading of AUB-BBBDA, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Brian. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pam Albert. Questions, comments, debate on that one? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed, motion passes. Can I entertain a motion, first reading of AUB-BBBE, please?
So moved.
Could you name it, please? Could you name the policy as well?
Sure, unexpired term fulfillment vacancies.
So moved.
Thank you, Brian. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pat. Questions, comments, debate on that one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Mr. Mayor, thank you. None opposed, motion passes. Can I entertain a motion for policy first read AUB-BDA, school committee organizational meeting? Can I entertain a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Brian. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Clarissa. Questions, comments, debate on that one? All right, seeing none, can I have a vote. All those in favor? None opposed, motion passes. All right, upcoming meetings. We have a building committee, so next week is pretty heavy with meetings. We do have a building committee meeting on Tuesday night, a special school committee meeting next Wednesday night. So it's not normally a meeting week, but we do have a meeting coming up next Wednesday. Finance committee is on Thursday, and then we are back to a regular school committee meeting on the 16th, yes.
Can I just confirm that in this, there's also a meeting on the 23rd? That's not on the agenda? So there is a meeting on the 23rd, right? Yes. So there is a regularly, or a budget meeting on the 23rd for these particular topics, adult ed, revenue.
So we are going March 2nd, March 9th, and March 23rd. As far as regular school committee meetings go, this...
2nd, the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd.
Yeah, sorry, skipped that one. It will be on the next, so the next agenda will extend out beyond that one. So we're hanging out for the month of March on Wednesdays, except for the 30th.
Budget season.
All right, future agenda items, requests for information. All right, seeing none, we need to move to executive session. Can I enter into a motion to enter into executive session, please?
So moved.
Sorry, for the purposes of negotiation pursuant to 1 MRSA. Thank you, Brian. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Motion to enter into executive session. It's passed. We're in executive session. Thank you all.